call the executive and instruct you that members of this committee are hereby advised of their duty under the state. Are we live? Okay, can we go on live before I start this?
So uncall the meeting to order.
I'm calling the meeting to order. And advising members of the committee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict. And you are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this committee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or appearance of conflict. And I don't expect there to be any, but if there are, please raise those. I want to call upon Catherine Jean. We did not have a live meeting in January, obviously, and they have new staff even since we met in July. And so, Catherine Jean, I'd like you to introduce all of your staff that might be here in the room today.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I welcome it. So over here in the corner, we have, we have Elizabeth Liza Foley, is what we call her. And she's been with us a couple of years, but a lot of that time, there was remote meetings. So you may not have actually had much opportunity to interact with Liza, but she's been with us a while, and she's getting ready to get married next month. And next to her is Ryan Cook, and Ryan was our summer clerk 2 years ago. And again, this summer, while she studied for the bar exam, she passed the bar exam and has been sworn in, so she's a new member of the bar. And our most recent addition as deputy counsel. And she's going to have a baby in January. So everybody has some kind of exciting news. And here we have, if you'll stand up so people can see you. This is Terry Nelson. She's also a new deputy counsel who comes to us from the district attorney's office in Wilmington. And you've been with us, like 2 months? Yeah, we're very new, but she's doing great. And behind her is Rob Weston. Rob's been here at least a couple of years, haven't you? How long?
2 years now.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, and he came to us from a civil litigation background, and he is a total expert on all the rules of civil procedure and all of the discovery. So he is very helpful to all of his colleagues in that way.
Maybe he could help rewrite that book that Greg Wilson.
Yeah, fix that book.
Yeah.
That book needs fixing. And behind him is Jessica Arnold. She's also one of our 3 new deputy counsel who's joined us just since the last meeting. And she's got about 9 years of experience trying cases in state and federal court, mostly criminal, but not all criminal. And let's see, now you're not in my office. Let's see. Oh, we have a lot more. So you know, of course, David Johnson, who's been here longer than I have, and he staffs the AP committee and also does all of our appeal work and represents us when we get sued in cases where the Attorney General won't represent us. So David does a lot for us, and he's threatening to retire next year, which is upsetting to me. Back here on the back row, we have Leonora Hodge. And Leonora does some discipline and disability stuff right now, trials and grievances, but mostly she's the trust account compliance counsel. So she is the one who runs that program. She does a lot of public speaking on the subject of trust account compliance, and but also tries cases sometimes. And she's going to be trying one next week.
We're going to be finishing one.
Finishing one next week. All right. Now let's see.
We got Kelly and Cam.
Oh. Okay, so now here we have Cam, the hipster there with the red tie. And he's been with us for about 3 years now. Tries lots of cases. He also seems to be called upon by judges to go to other jurisdictions and prosecute things that they want to prosecute against lawyers. So he seems to be on the road a lot. And we have Kelly DeAngelis. And Kelly joined us, about 1.5 years ago? Is that right? And she came to us from the Wake County Public Defender's Office and has just done a great job. Now, I didn't mention that Cameron had been in private practice doing criminal cases in Wake County for several years before we stole him away from his other employer. So, have I now introduced everybody? Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity.
I never want to take it for granted that we know who these folks are, and so periodically it would be nice to be reminded of who they are. And thank you for your service to the state bar. And I can't order you to be at the council meeting tomorrow, so I can introduce you to the entire council, but I'd like for you to do that, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. The minutes of the proposed minutes of the council meeting back on July the 22nd are on SharePoint. I hope you've had an opportunity to review those, along with the minutes of the executive committee meeting on July the 21st. Does anyone have a motion that we accept those minutes?
So moved.
Second is
Recommend the council.
recommend to the council that they adopt. Is there any discussion about that? I'll call it to a vote. All in favor of recommending those to the council tomorrow? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you. We're going to give Marcy a minute to get settled in here. And we'll move that to number 3, which is the meeting dates for the council in 2023. Those dates are as follows, and these are proposed until passed by council tomorrow. January the 17th through the 20th of 2023 at the bar headquarters here. April 18th to the 21st at the bar headquarters. July 18th through the 21st at the Renaissance Hotel in Asheville. And October 24th through the 27th at the Bar Center. Those are the proposed dates at this point in time. We just need to have a motion to send those to the council at this time.
So moved. Second.
I saw you and felt you. We got a motion and a second. All in favor of those dates, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. All right, we'll call Marcy to bring us the financial report.
Okay, so the Finance and Audit Committee reviewed the third quarter financial statements and make a recommendation for approval.
That's a request of the Committee Finance and Audit, so it doesn't need a second. Any questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Each year, the council must set the amount of the annual membership fees. The dues are currently $300, which is the statutory maximum. And the Finance and Audit Committee recommends setting the dues at $300 for 2023.
All right. Any questions about that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
So the Client Security Fund financial statements in the 2022-2023 budget were on SharePoint. The Finance and Audit Committee recommends approval of both the financial statements and the budget for the Client Security Fund.
These are recommendations to the council, as Alice has pointed out. Any questions about that? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
So for 2022, the Client Security Fund assessment imposed by the Supreme Court was $25 for each active member. The recommendation is that there not be an assessment for 2023 because the Client Security Fund has a pretty large balance in the account this time.
Sure. Okay. There has to be an amount in reserve at always, and so, and I'll just tell you that the Chief Justice is extremely happy that we're not assessing this because he had some concerns last year.
So we have to have it's $1 million that we're required.
You're required to keep $1 million in reserve.
And we have like 3.5. There are some claims that we anticipate coming down the pike, so next year we may have to go back to the assessment. But anyway, the recommendation is no assessment for 2023.
So that's a recommendation to send to the councils. Anybody have any questions about that? You can tell your constituents that you have reduced their bar dues. Maybe you can get a lunch or something out of it. Anyway, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, personnel.
Okay, so the Finance and Audit Committee also reviewed a updated personnel policy that addressed parental leave, and that policy was also on SharePoint. And the Finance and Audit Committee recommends adoption of the personnel policy regarding parental leave.
Anybody have any questions about that? All right. That's being recommended by the Finance and Audit to send to the council. All in favor of sending that to the council, say aye. All opposed? Thank you. And move to the appointments, please.
So appointments, the Board of Continuing Legal Education, there were 3 appointments to be made. Rebecca Eggers-Grider, Elizabeth Keever, and Marissa Campbell were not eligible for reappointment. And the Advisory Committee recommends, Appointments Advisory Committee recommends the appointment of Judge Addie Rawls, Robert Ponton, and Serena Williams. And that really is her name.
Does anybody have any questions about that, about those appointments? Okay. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
So we also had to consider the appointment of the chair and vice chair for the Board of Continuing Legal Education, and the recommendation is Adrian Blocker as chair and Judge Ashley Parker Dunstan as vice chair.
Any questions about those appointments? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. All opposed?
So there are 5 appointments to be made for the Board of Law Examiners, and all 5 are eligible for reappointment, and
Except for Kimberly.
except for Kimberly. There was 1 that was not. So the 4 that were, could be reappointed were Shelley Blake Curran, Sherry W. Elliott, Michael J. Green, and D. Clark Smith, and it's recommendation that they be reappointed to the Board of Law Examiners.
Do you want to take up the,
And then we also, the committee also recommends the appointment of Judge Athena Fox Brooks.
Judge Fox is, or Brooks is getting ready to retire in December, so I saw her down in Beaufort. She was really happy to be given this chance. Anybody have any questions about that? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Thank you.
The Board of Paralegal Certification, there was there's a requirement that a lawyer paralegal studies program director has to be one of the members of this board. Warren Hodges is currently that member, and he is not eligible for reappointment. So it's a recommendation of the Appointments Advisory Council that Precious Vines Harris be appointed to fill that position. Also, there has to be a paralegal on the board, and the recommendation for that position is Carrie J. Marshall, and the paralegal is chosen by vote of the active members of the paralegals. So she got the most votes. Ms. Marshall did. And then we also recommend the appointment of Counselor Scott Hart to fill the position of Matt Smith, who we all know is coming off the board for apparent reasons. And let's do that first. So it's our recommendation that they be appointed.
Mr. Hart, you're willing to serve? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions about those nominations? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Hart.
So we also have to appoint the chair and vice chair. So it's a little bit of a different, we have a conditional appointment of the chair for Brian G. Scott. So Mr. Scott is rotating off of the board, and he can serve another year if he is appointed chair under the new amendments to the rules, which have not yet been passed but are expected to be passed by January. Did I get that right?
Yes. By the court.
By the court, yes.
Waiting for the court.
The court, waiting for the court. And so our recommendation, or the board, the Appointments Advisory Committee's recommendation is that Brian G. Scott be appointed chair conditional on the approval of the amendments by the Supreme Court to serve for a year as chair. And then the committee also recommends Benita Powell as vice chair.
Are there any questions about those appointments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed?
The Client Security Board of Trustees, there's one appointment to be made. John Burns, who's a public member, is not eligible for reappointment. And so the committee recommends the appointment of Ted Whitehurst to fill the public member position.
Is there any questions about that appointment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
And then the Client Security Fund Board of Trustees, we need to fill the chair and the vice chair positions, and the committee recommends Thomas Lunsford II as chair and Amy E. Richardson as vice chair.
All right.
And they both are currently serving in those positions.
Do you have any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
That's the report of the nominations.
You want to give a report of what's coming up for nominations? And the next one, if you don't have them.
There's, I don't have very much. We didn't really, I don't think we really have much.
We have LAP, the Lawyers Assistance Program. There's going to be some appointments for that, and also the North Carolina State Bar Foundation Board.
So that one, that we don't have any, that's kind of set.
Right, and the North Carolina Legal Education Assistance Foundation. That's it.
Just so you know that every meeting at the end of the Appointments Advisory Committee, there are a listing of the appointments that are coming up, and we really do need help with names, with people that you think would be great to serve on these various boards and commissions. And so please take the time to look at that prior to the meeting, so we have a chance to send out the person's resume to the committee members. Appreciate your help with that.
Any questions about that? That'd be real helpful as we try to get the right folks into those spots. So, all right, item number 5 is the proposed amendments for adoptions. These were published after the July meeting. I'm told that there was no adverse response to any of these. I would draw your attention to your supplemental agenda. There is a item F, which is the proposed amendment to the policies and rules concerning prepaid legal services plan. I would like to take all of these A, B, C, D, E, and F as one, unless someone wants to pull one out for discussion. Does anybody want to do that? Do I have a motion to send these rule amendments to council tomorrow for adoption or recommendation to be sent to the Chief Justice? Have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion about those? This is A through F on items 5. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? If you guys want, if you don't know what these are and want us to go over them or explain something, please let me know. I don't want to do anything without everybody knowing what's going on. Item 6, the proposed amendments for publication. Again, those are A through D on your agenda. If anybody wants to pull one of those and discuss it, I'm happy to do that. If not, this is just for publication, so it's not like it's a serious matter. Just send it over to the publication so that we can get some comments about it. Does anybody want to pull any of those? Do I have a motion to publish A through D, those rule amendments?
Can I, I'm sorry, I got stuck getting interrupted in time. 6B, if I could just point out one thing on the proposed CLE, new proposed CLE amendments from the CLE board. In your materials, there's the 4 proposed changes. The CLE board met after we published these this agenda, and there is one small change to number 3, which is the interactivity requirement. The language that the CLE board proposed is just a little bit different, and it is added, it's in the sentence, you'll see the sponsor of an online or on-demand program, and this is what we proposed, must have an approved method for reliably and actively verifying attendance and reporting the number of credit hours. And then that last sentence is still the same as what is in your materials. So we just added the word approved, made sure that there was some sort of approved method there. So that's the only change to what we have included in your materials. And the highlight for your members and for your districts is that they proposed bringing back the carryover credit all the way up to 12 hours. So we're not ready to put everything out there for the full approval of all of the rules, but this is a new set of proposed changes that we're going to publish, and then we'll continue to be working on the drawing board to get these things ready for a final presentation for your review.
We're still getting comments about these things. I know when I was in Beaufort for Monday, I talked to the AOC guy, and he got in touch with Peter about it. So the other one I just want to draw your attention is number C is, or letter C is the standing committee for the Access to Justice committee. So that's an important one for us because we want to make that a standing committee from here on out. And I don't anticipate we're going to be pushed back on that. We have to publish it. So anybody have any questions about any A through D? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Catherine, we'll give the litigation report.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask David to report to you on a matter where y'all authorized us to seek an injunction some time ago, and to give a status report on that, please.
Yes, this is the case against Valerie Arroyo. We have filed a motion for summary judgment, and we have requested that it be calendared for the session beginning November 28th, and hopefully that will bring a conclusion to that matter.
Okay.
Thank you, David. And there are written explanations of the status of all the other cases, none of which really warrant any kind of discussion, but I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody can have about them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? All right. Peter, you want to talk about the legislative liaison report?
Yes, and so this past quarter was relatively quiet, other than, as you recall, right near the, right before the July meeting, there was some a legislative change of creating this grievance review panel. And when we dealt with that in July, there hasn't been anything new legislatively this quarter. The legislators are out campaigning right now, and we'll certainly know a lot about what's going to happen next year come the second Tuesday in November. We did have a great lunch yesterday to discuss some legislative strategy, and we'll be trying to roll out some plans for that in January, which may include some additional asks for you as counselors in terms of engagement with your legislators, and potentially some breakfasts or meetings throughout the year where we get to have a time where we can invite some of the lawyer legislators here. So we'll have a pretty good strategy plan in January to deal with both engaging with our legislators in general, and also and some strategies for how we might go about getting a bill to increase the cap on dues passed this session.
And so there's more to come, probably by the end, with the election, second Tuesday of the month of November, we'll have a better view of what's going on. It doesn't look like there's going to be changes to leadership over there, but there may be some changes to some key pieces, especially for the state bar purposes. So, anybody have any questions of Peter about that? We had a good lunch yesterday. I think it was super productive to have that lunch. So, okay. Evan, we'd like to hear a little bit about your PMDR and cybersecurity committee.
You will, thankfully. When we left this story 90 days ago, we had received a $100,000 estimate for creating a platform for our cybersecurity stuff. And I think everyone was just kind of appalled at that price. And we were awaiting a return from Standpoint Decision. This is a group out of Canada that hosts the Colorado PMDR. They host another dozen or two regulatory agencies. Platforms to do self-assessments. And their cost estimate came in this quarter, and their estimate was $15,000 to set it up, and $10,000 a year as opposed to. So the first year was $25,000 and approximately $10,000 after each year thereafter. So we had Catherine and Leonore kind of vet them out first. Catherine and Leonore called Matt Sims and talked about the standpoint proposal to see, just to kind of do some due diligence. And they reported back favorably. And so we set up a meeting of the PMBR committee, and unfortunately, we did not have a quorum because some of our members had forgotten about the meeting. But we had a great non-quorum meeting. We had Matt Sims, who's the director of Standpoint Decisions, walk us through the platform and what kind of feedback we can get, what kind of information we can put on it, how they measure it, and how they curate it, how they report it back, and it far exceeded any of my expectations, along with everyone else on the PMBR committee. I mean, it's anonymous. As you go in, you sort of click what size firm you're on, 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10. Are you rural, urban? And we can put in a whole bunch of other different measures to figure out who is using this. The platform is easy to use and it grades you out once you go through the self-assessment. And it prioritizes what you need to look for after you finish the assessment. And Leonore and I and Mac talked about putting together a proposal for sponsors on this program. And so Mac put together what I will call a very sophisticated and subtle proposed private funding plan for the project. It really was a masterpiece, just because there were some things that were put in here just to kind of make some people more interested than others in sponsoring it. And we had a call. We were actually called by Lawyers Mutual. And this is sort of one of the first times in Mac's fundraising career that we've had a potential sponsor reach out to us. And so Mac and I and Leonore spent an hour on the phone with the powers that be at Lawyers Mutual. And we had a fantastic discussion. And Lawyers Mutual has expressed their interest, in fact, their serious interest in being the sole sponsor of this activity. And there's more work to do, but this last quarter has finally put some things into focus. We've got an affordable, really elegant platform to put this on. We have click-through links. You can actually use the library of Lawyers Mutual to click through on some of these. Standpoint Decisions has a library of 500 to 600 different click-throughs that they can curate on this platform. So they don't like more than 3 popping up at any time, but I think we can arrange to have Lawyers Mutual pop up first on each one of the questions and click through. But they're able to give us an accounting, some measurements, feedback of who's using it, how many are using it, what their demographics are. And the final really good thing about Standpoint is they have a number of subject matter experts up there that will take what we have, and we think it's a good, it's really a good product, because we've spent, a lot of time. I'm not going to go back through the 5 work groups and everything that we went through the last 2 years to try to put this together. But they're going to have their lawyers and their subject matter experts look at this and help us put this up. And I think we have a certain number, I think it's 5 hours, Leonore, 5 hours of free time for them to help us curate this. So Lawyers Mutual is interested in 2023 Standpoint Decisions. I would like to have this starting and up in 2023. The PNBR committee would like to be shed of this in 2023. but it is going to take some updating periodically because technology changes so fast. And we talked with Standpoint about that and Lawyers Mutual. And so the last quarter has been, things have been coming into focus. So hopefully we'll have something by mid next year. I mean, we're really waiting on some final stuff from Lawyers Mutual and also from Standpoint.
It's going to be the AVO committee, isn't it? Length of time.
Except we'll get a finished product.
Yeah. That's very encouraging.
Does anybody have any questions of Evan about that? Evan, thanks. I mean, that's been a big pull. I know. Been a long time.
Yeah, a lot of cats.
Yeah. Yep, thank you. Andrea?
It's not as interesting as that. The AP committee met and we had 9 complaints and inquiries for action, and there were 8 letters of caution that were issued. There was 1 dismissal. Staff accepted the registration of 8 prepaid legal plans for registration during the quarter. And the committee voted to recommend to the council 2 items concerning prepaid legal plans. And this resulted in recommendations from a subcommittee that looked at the rules. And so the 2 things that we're going to be asking council to adopt are first, an increase in the initial and annual registration fees from $100 to $300. And secondly, eliminating the ability of plan members to arrange and provide for specific legal services at fees that are less than what a non-member of the plan would normally pay. So basically, we're taking away their ability to be middlemen and make referrals and get kickbacks from them. Or even just referrals asking lawyers to do legal work for less. So those are the 2 proposed changes, and that's it. I don't know if a motion needs to be made.
Is the second one a rule amendment? Is that the rule
It's a
amendment
rule
we've already
amendment.
approved?
It's amendment to the definition of the prepaid
Yeah.
plan rule.
That's the one we're publishing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's been published.
That's my understanding. Is that
It's been published and we voted on it already as a part of the amendments that have been published that will now be recommended for adoption to the council.
So we don't need to take any action today, do we?
We just-
Go to
well,
the council tomorrow?
I think the increase is a policy. That doesn't have to be published, but we do need to pass it through this committee, the increase in fees. I was just looking for that.
It wasn't, we didn't list it on this. We did, it came up during executive last time and
Okay.
didn't get put on the agenda.
Okay.
So it's coming from AP, it's a motion of the committee.
I trust you.
So for purposes of tomorrow, the council will be voting on both, just to confirm?
Well,
or-
The way we set it up is because that was a rule amendment and it's been published, we just rolled it into all of the rule amendments. There was 1 motion on all of the
Okay.
rule amendments. So
Okay.
if you're okay with that,
Is that
I'm
this
very
one?
efficient way, yes, sir.
Well, that was letter F.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Well, I'm very
it's sufficient
supportive
to
of
do it that way,
efficiency.
but we do need a motion from AP to increase the fee.
So that's a recommendation from that committee, so we just don't need a second, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, is there any questions about that? Increase in fees at
And it's
all?
not just the initial fee, it's the renewal fee. too.
Right.
The initial and annual registration.
Registration. Any questions about that? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you, Andrea. Vice President Brown?
The Issues Committee met yesterday and discussed two matters and had one action item. We received a progress report on the diversity and inclusion initiatives that the council approved back in April. Two specific focuses, and I'll tell you specifically what they were for the record. Brian gave us a report on the progress and identifying consultants to work with the State Bar, mainly with Alice, to analyze the current policies, procedures, practices, workforce, work environment, culture, and personnel to assess DEI enhancement opportunities. That was one of the recommendations that the council adopted, and Alice continues to work on that now. She's received, as I understand it, 3 reports or proposals from consultants, one being a Cadillac, one being maybe a Volkswagen model or something like that. She is going to continue to study those and then come back with a recommendation to this body by December, as I understand.
So my thinking is that it would be part of the budget for 2023. The original initiative was that the officers would make the selection, but there's obviously a cost involved, so it'll be part of the budget process, approved by the officers in advance, and then brought to you at the January meeting.
January meeting, correct, okay. All right, and then we received a quick update on the second item she's focused on, which is a study of the history of the State Bar, which this council also approved. And Alice continues to work on that to identify the appropriate individuals who may be able to give us that report that we need. And again, that is a report that is going to be funded not out of our dues, but independently funded is the hope. So that is progress so far. Alice, anything?
No, it's been a little more difficult to really identify the right people to do that. We've had several recommendations from different sources, but I kind of put the DEI analysis ahead and worked on that, and hopefully this quarter I'll have some more time to work on the history project. But the foundation is meeting tomorrow, and we started a conversation with them about providing the funding. And I think we've made some progress in their interest. Just for your information, the foundation was created from money that law firms and some corporations gave to the State Bar at the time of building the State Bar for the purpose of helping with the construction of the State Bar. And we ended up having funds left over from that, in excess of $1 million. And so the foundation was created, and they have managed those funds with the assumption that the money was given for the construction of the building, and therefore the funds should be used to support the building. And annually they give us $50,000 to offset the mortgage expenses primarily. We've periodically gone to them for improvements to the building, staying within those confines. So this was the first time that we went to them and said we would like you to consider funding something that's not strictly related to the actual building itself or the maintenance of the building or anything of that nature. And it was a very interesting conversation. I think the end of that was that they could see no reason to restrict the use of the earnings on those original funds and any gift to the foundation since the completion of the construction of the building. There haven't been a ton of new gifts. There have been some. Kevin was instrumental in some gifts, memorial gifts in memory of Jim Fox. But we are working on increasing gifts to the foundation, and then it would require an analysis of the original gifts and the earnings on those gifts to figure out what might be available for funding of projects of this nature. But I think we can get there. The board seemed interested in doing this, felt like it was history was kind of foundational in a way, it's not the actual building, but it's part of, our foundation. So I think we're good there.
Okay. The action item was we considered the proposed rule amendments to make the Access to Justice Committee a standing committee of the council. That was discussed. We looked at the language and it passed. And so I guess that goes to
Council.
Yeah.
Or, I think it was published.
Yeah,
That needs to be
for
published.
publication, it was part of the prior motion.
Exactly, right. And then the third item briefly was we had a discussion about issues that might come before the Issues Committee for further study. Quite frankly, as you know, we're now sort of bifurcating the process such that access to justice issues will now be under the umbrella of the new standing committee if it's approved. And then other issues will remain at the discretion and pleasure of the president to refer to the Issues Committee, which is not a standing committee. And so far, we've sort of identified two to take a look at, studying, and continue exploring, quite frankly. One is the facilitation of succession plans for sole practitioners in a small firm. That is something that's in the work in the beginning stages that we discussed yesterday. And the second was the potential creation of additional deferral programs to address professional misconduct, similar to, for example, the LAP and the TAC programs. That's, again, a discussion at this point, and we'll look into whether or not how we proceed with that at the pleasure of the president and the committee. So those were the three things that we discussed, Mr. President. That's the report.
Any questions about any of that? Thank you, Todd. Vice President in waiting, Matt Smith.
The Access to Justice Committee met yesterday just to kind of get a warm up and kind of put the perfunctory stuff out of the way so that when we come back in January, we're really hitting the ground running. We had a long discussion about the charge of the committee and what we were supposed to do, and it's going to be very broad. And anything that can be identified as access to justice. Even Brian said that some things on its face may not be access to justice, but you start peeling it away and it falls under access to justice. One of the things that had already been created and became part of access to justice, something near and dear to my heart, which is legal deserts. You know, I think you've seen Brian's excellent work on comparison of lawyers and populations, and I'm in a legal desert. But Alan LaCroix had a subcommittee. We had a Zoom meeting last Friday wherein the law schools showed up and offered their very candid opinions as to how to get people to places like Rockingham and Castle County and Morganton and places like that. They steered us in a direction of maybe not so much those folks, but look at the folks who are burned out from being in Raleigh or Charlotte or wherever 7 to 10 years down the road. So that's something that will continue to be looked at, and what can we do there. As late as today at lunch, we were talking about funding sources for some possible things to do about legal deserts. Chief Justice's office has given us some direction on that, and a subcommittee will probably be formed with the task of go forth and find us some money.
For stipends and things like
right,
that.
yeah. We're going to call it the Ways and Means Committee or something like that. But we have a lot of things to look at. I came up with the idea that we're going to have some homework, and I grade very difficultly. So people are going to have to turn in some written questions and answers. We have to keep in mind, however, what we can and cannot do. And that's the biggest part. I think I may be stepping a little bit into ethics committee stuff, but there's some ethics proposals that we can do. We can't change hourly rates for attorneys on court-appointed lists. We don't necessarily want to go to the legislature right now with anything. It's just what can we do within the confines of these walls or with the help of the Chief Justice. The Chief has brought this up on more than one occasion. This is something that he is concerned about. So we will do our best to keep the focus there, and hopefully we'll have more to report in coming meetings.
Thank you. Any questions? that committee's gotta, I think having that committee meeting yesterday, in view of the fact that there wasn't any quote-unquote progress made, there was a lot of progress made with regards to kind of organization and starting to think about that. And so I think in January, we're going to be in a better position to really kick it in gear and make some progress. But I anticipate that at least the legal desert thing's going to take a while. So I told the Superior Court judges on Monday that we were looking at how we could bring breweries to these areas. And then we had considered looking at and talking to Nick Saban and finding out how he recruits. But then there were some political correctness problems there. So anyway.
Yeah, but we would lose out to Tennessee.
Yeah. All right. Dorothy's not here. She's probably in court. So Peter or Brian, you want to talk about communications?
Yeah, we had a good meeting yesterday where we gave our updates on the past quarter and plans for the next quarter. I think Dorothy will be at the council meeting tomorrow and can just give her communications committee report then as well.
All right. Okay, thanks. Evan, you talk about the ethics committee. Got anything happening there? Not much.
Pardon me?
Got anything happening in the ethics committee? Probably not
Yeah,
much.
actually, we do. We had a really good substantive meeting this morning. But one of the things that surprised me was the report from Ann Parkin on trust account audits. For the first time on a random audit, she has referred 4 lawyers or law firms to grievance for violations. And I looked at her report, and there are a number of technical violations that range from technical to you need to get a handle on this. And so I think that what we talked about on ethics committee is trying to get some information out to the districts about, let's look at the handbook. There's there's a guide in the trust account handbook of everything you have to do. And let's try to get a much higher compliance, because every quarter we see anywhere from 20 to 30% of the random audits out of compliance, from technical things to moderately significant things. But it's really something that we ought to try to get some better numbers on. Suzanne and Nicole had over 1,000 communications again on the ethics hotline. I mean, that's 1,000 in a 3-month period, which is just, just swamping, really. But it's keeping those lawyers that call between the lines. We are so fortunate to have those two helping us. They're just superstars, both of them. And Brian, too, on occasion.
I appreciate that.
So we've already talked about the rule amendments to Rule 1.15 and Rule 4.1. Those are going to pass. Those are really more wordsmithing and correction. One of the things that I was very interested in and that we talked at length about was considering changing Rule 1.8E, which is the rule that prohibits gifts by lawyers to clients in almost a prophylactic form. I mean, it's a prohibition. The ABA changed that rule a couple of years ago to allow gifts in certain very limited situations where nonprofit law firms or clinics or law schools were representing indigent people pro bono, and the clients needed some sort of assistance for rent, transportation, food, so that they just don't fall off the grid. Can't advertise it, but the ABA is getting out in front of this, and this dovetails really with this access to justice, not only legal deserts, but access to justice for underserved people. So, Catherine Fry and I have started putting together a really good subcommittee on that, and we're gonna try to move that along as fast as we possibly can. That went to subcommittee. We had, I'm not gonna get into all the details, but one of the, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 more issues that went to subcommittee, but one of the most interesting ones is the billing considerations for overlapping legal service. And this, what appeared to be a really simple, straightforward answer about can you bill when you're traveling, can you bill travel time, and then can you double bill when you're working on somebody else's case. Well, it ain't that simple. We sent out a very simple opinion. Said, no, you can't do that. ABA says you can't do that. No other state says you can do that. But we've had a couple of counselors and some others really get in our ears about certain aspects of this. So this is now going down, as Matt McCarley would say, the ethics rabbit hole. And so it's going to be there for a little while, but and Marcy had some good suggestions about how to curate this. But the other thing that's in subcommittee that's really interesting, that really affects us older lawyers, are the sale of the law practice and proper handling of agent client files. And I had a call from a lawyer this week or last week who was selling her practice, and we went through the steps, and she's doing all the stuff right, but and the clients that she couldn't get a hold of, she was retaining those files. But anyway, this is also an important issue that's going to come up, especially with the graying of the legal practice here as the class of 78 grows older. And finally, we passed an ethics advisory that dealt with a specific situation with the Center for Death Penalty that kind of gives them some guidance. That does not need to go before the council. And the last thing that needs to go before the council is a motion to approve FEO 5, which is a client paying a public adjuster or witness a contingency fee, which is authorized by statute. We passed that, we published it, and we got no comments, and so it's ready to go to council. So I think, since I think the executive committee is going to handle the 1.15 and 4.1, the only thing that ethics committee needs to do tomorrow is make a motion for approval of FEO 5.
Okay.
And that's the report.
That doesn't need to pass this body, but anyway, thank you for your work on that. Anybody have any questions of Evan with regards to the work of the ethics committee? Okay. So I'm going to call upon Warren, and Warren, you want to give some opening remarks before we go into executive session?
I'd like to thank you, Darren, especially, but also Marcy. Barbara is not here. We finally breaking the log. Oh, Todd. Oh, there she is. I'm sorry. You're right. Anyways, we're finally breaking the log jam on the backup we had on awards presentations that we couldn't give out during COVID. And we really, I think last quarter we gave out 4. I don't go over all of them. But yeah, it's really great, and we're also getting more nominations, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I appreciate, once again, y'all's efforts in we're getting a lot of nominations from counselors now too, which is good. Obviously the support letters and whatnot are not often from counselors, but we're getting nominations from counselors, folks in their jurisdictions, because y'all are hearing me when I say go home and find these people. We had a really good question during the committee meeting yesterday. It's like, I think he looked at Tom Ross's nomination package and said, you know, I've got great people in my district, but I measure up to some of the people that come up here for nomination, and we have to reassure them. That's not the point. That's really not the point. That's not what this is about. This is not some, this is to recognize the folks that are really, really important to the folks in your district. And that might not get all those accolades that somebody like Tom Ross gets, who obviously deserves the award too. But anyway, so we also have some upcoming, we're already have planned, I think, 3 more presentations before the January meeting. Once again, you guys are helping with those two, so I appreciate that. And with that, I'd like to move to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143, -318 and 11A2 to prevent the premature disclosure of an honorary degree, scholarship, prize, or similar award.
All right, we have a motion to go into closed session based on that statute. Does anybody have any questions? Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Either in your ear.
Mr. Savage, do you have a motion for the executive committee?
I do. Mr. President, on behalf of the committee, I move that the executive committee approve the nominations discussed in closed session for candidate A and candidate B for the presentation of John B. McMillan Distinguished Service Award, subject to our due diligence checks, and for those nominations to go forward to the full council.
All right, that doesn't need a second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. We have any other business? All right, so we will shortly reconvene at the Marriott to throne Madam Marcy Armstrong as president.
Not today, guys.
So, thank you guys for all your work this week. I'll say that to the full body, and thank you for your work during the year.
Because everybody has fun tonight. That's what we wanted to have some fun.
Yep.
You enjoy.